Underneath a single mountain in a Chinese city most Westerners cannot pronounce, geologists just found a metal deposit valued at $80 trillion, more than the entire annual economic output of the United States, China, and Germany combined. You heard that right. The metal is not gold. It is not lithium. It is something called rubidium, and without it, your GPS stops working, your cancer scans go dark, and global financial timing collapses inside a week. Now here is where the story turns. China is not planning to sell most of it, and that single decision is what has Washington genuinely worried. If you want the full picture, the like and subscribe buttons keep this kind of reporting coming, and by the end of this video, you will know exactly why one mountain in Guangdong just shifted global power. We begin with the metal almost nobody talks about. A metal you have never heard of. Pull out a periodic table. Start at the top. Hydrogen, helium, lithium. Keep counting. Skip past the elements you remember from school. Oxygen, iron, copper, gold. Keep going past lithium, the famous one that everybody now associates with electric car batteries. 3 squares further down the same column, you land on element 37. The label reads RB, that is rubidium, and there is a very good chance you have never heard of it before clicking on this video. Rubidium is a soft, silvery white metal. Hold a small chunk in your hand, and it would feel about as firm as a stick of cold butter. You could carve it with an ordinary kitchen knife. But here is where the metal turns dangerous. Rubidium is so violently reactive with moisture that even the humidity in the air will set it on fire. Drop a piece into a glass of water and the reaction is explosive enough to shatter the glass. Scientists who work with the pure metal store it inside sealed glass tubes filled with argon gas, a gas that refuses to react with anything because exposing rubidium to ordinary air for more than a few minutes destroys it. So far, this sounds like a chemistry curiosity. Now here is the layer that turns it into a geopolitical story. Global production of rubidium runs at roughly 4 to 5 tons every single year. Worldwide demand sits between 15 and 20 tons annually. Read those two numbers again. The world is producing 1/4 of what the world actually uses. To anchor that gap, imagine if every bakery on Earth were running on 1/4 of the flour it needed, the entire industry would seize up inside a month. Rubidium has been running that deficit for years, quietly, with almost no public attention. Most people, when they hear about a strategic metal shortage, think of rare earths or lithium. Both of those metals have had their headlines. Both have driven entire policy debates in Washington and Brussels. Rubidium has had almost none of that coverage. Walk into any politician's office in any Western capital and ask them to describe rubidium's strategic significance, and you will get a blank stare from most of them. That blank stare is the problem. Here is the angle most reporters have walked past entirely. The reason rubidium has stayed under the public radar is not because the metal is unimportant. It is because the applications that depend on it are buried so deep inside other systems that almost nobody notices the rubidium is there. The satellite overhead still works. The cancer scan still happens. The cell tower still connects your call. The metal inside the machine that makes all of those things possible never shows up on a receipt. And that invisibility is exactly why a sudden disruption in rubidium supply would be more damaging, more confusing, and more difficult to respond to than any other critical mineral crisis the modern world has lived through. Because before we get to the strategic threat, you need to understand what is actually buried beneath one mountain in southern China and how that single discovery rewrote the rules of an industry the rest of the world barely knew existed. One discovery, 90 times bigger than anything before. Open Google Maps and search for a city called Heyuan. Most viewers will need a second to find it. Heyuan sits in the northeastern corner of Guangdong province in southern China, surrounded by low-rolling mountains, rice fields, and tea plantations. The city has roughly 3 million residents, bigger than Chicago by population, but a name almost no Western journalist could place on a map. Until recently, Heyuan was best known for 2 things: its hot springs and a fossilized dinosaur egg collection at the local museum. That changed the day Chinese geological surveyors finished mapping what was underneath the surrounding mountains. What they found was not just a rubidium deposit. It was the largest rubidium deposit ever recorded on Earth. 180,000 tons of rubidium-bearing ore, sitting in a single mountain range under one Chinese city. To anchor that number, picture a major find rubidium deposit anywhere else in the world. Before Heyuan, the largest known reserves were measured in deposits of roughly 2,000 tons. The Heyuan find is nearly 90 times larger than that previous benchmark. Not double, not triple, 90 times. Now think about what that ratio means in practical terms. Imagine a global industry that has been carefully managing a 30-piece pie for decades, slicing it thinner every year as demand grew. And then one player at the table walks in carrying enough additional pie to feed the same room for the next 2 centuries. Every slice negotiation that came before is now meaningless. Every supplier contract is renegotiated by default. Every government that depended on the old supply chain has to redraw its strategic plans from scratch. That is the position Heyuan put China in overnight. Here is the detail Western surveyors are still absorbing. Geological teams have been combing the United States, Canada, Australia, and parts of Africa for decades, looking for rubidium reserves of any significant size. The work has been serious, and the methods have been sound. American teams in Nevada and Idaho have cataloged small rubidium concentrations in lepidolite ore. Australian surveyors have mapped traces in pegmatite formations. The results were respectable but never close to industrially transformative. The Western mineral exploration community did not fail at this. The geology simply did not cooperate. And here is where the Chinese discovery shifts from impressive to strategically decisive. The value attached to the Heyuan find by Chinese state media and independent analysts sits at roughly $80 trillion. 80 trillion is a number large enough to lose meaning, so anchor it this way. The combined annual economic output of the United States, China, and Germany, together the 3 largest economies on the planet, adds up to roughly $55 trillion. The Heyuan rubidium deposit is valued higher than that combined total. One mountain, one city, one element on the periodic table. Of course, a deposit sitting in the ground is not the same thing as usable supply. Mining has to happen. Refining has to happen. Processing has to happen. None of those steps are trivial when the metal involved catches fire on contact with humid air. So the discovery itself is only the opening move. What turns Heyuan from a geological event into a permanent geopolitical shift is what rubidium actually does once it leaves the ground. And the first place that metal lands is roughly 12,000 miles above your head, in a fleet of satellites that quietly run almost everything you depend on. The reason your GPS knows where you are. Open your phone, tap on the Maps app, watch that little blue dot find you anywhere on Earth within a few feet of your actual location. The trick that makes that dot work is not the phone. It is not the cell tower. It is a fleet of roughly 30 satellites orbiting 12,000 miles above your head. To anchor that altitude, that is roughly 50 times higher than the International Space Station, drifting in a precise formation that covers every square foot of the planet's surface in line of sight from at least 4 satellites at a time. Your phone listens for signals from those satellites, calculates how long each signal took to arrive, and uses the time difference to triangulate your location. The entire system depends on one thing: time. Specifically, time measured so precisely that ordinary clocks cannot keep up. The signal from a satellite to your phone travels at the speed of light. Light moves about 1 foot every nanosecond. A nanosecond is 1/1000th of a second. If the clock on the satellite drifts by even a single microsecond, a millionth of a second, the time it takes you to blink 1,000th of a single time, your position on Earth would shift by about 1,000 feet. To picture what that error means in practice, the next time you ask for directions to the coffee shop on the corner, your phone would send you 3 blocks away to somebody else's apartment building. So the satellite needs a clock that does not drift, not by seconds, not by milliseconds, not by microseconds, by nanoseconds, or better. And the only kind of clock humans have ever built that meets that standard is an atomic clock. Think of an atomic clock like a tuning fork that vibrates at an exact, unchangeable frequency forever. Strike a regular tuning fork, and it hums at the same pitch every time. Now imagine a tuning fork made out of atoms, which never wear out, never go out of tune, and vibrate at a frequency so precise that physicists use them to define the second itself. Here is the layer that almost no science teacher gets around to in a classroom. The atom inside the most widely used GPS atomic clock, the one that vibrates at exactly the right frequency for satellite synchronization, is rubidium, not gold, not platinum, not some exotic engineered alloy. The same soft, fire hazard metal you just learned about in Chapter 1. Rubidium happens to have an electron behavior that lets it absorb and re-emit microwave energy at a frequency so stable that you can build a clock around it that drifts less than 1 second across 100,000 years. Now picture what happens if that supply of rubidium stops arriving on time. The satellites already in orbit keep working because their existing clocks were built years ago. But every replacement satellite, every next-generation system, every upgraded military positioning network needs new rubidium clocks built from new rubidium. Cut the metal, and you do not break GPS overnight. You break the future of GPS quietly over the next decade. And here is where the story gets genuinely uncomfortable. The system that lets your delivery driver find your front door is the same system that lets a guided missile find its target, the same system that lets a stock exchange timestamp a trade to the microsecond, the same system that lets a power grid balance load across thousands of miles. Rubidium is not just inside your phone. It is inside the timing layer of modern civilization. And one Chinese mountain just took unilateral control of the world's primary supply. But satellites are only one of 5 places this metal goes. The next 4 are what take the strategic vulnerability from serious to almost surreal. The 5 things that stop without it. GPS was the first application. Here are the other 4, in escalating order of how badly the world breaks without them. Start with deep space exploration. The Dawn spacecraft, launched by NASA in 2007, became the first human-made object ever to visit 2 different bodies in the asteroid belt Vesta and Ceres across an 11-year mission. Conventional chemical rockets could not have done it. They burned through fuel too quickly for that kind of distance. Instead, Dawn used an ion thruster. Think of an ion thruster like a garden hose with electrified water. Instead of fuel exploding out the back, charged particles get accelerated to enormous speeds and pushed out a nozzle, producing a steady, efficient, decade-long shove through empty space. The charged particle that worked best for Dawn's mission was xenon. The next generation of probes is being designed around a different particle that delivers even higher efficiency rubidium. Move from space to medicine. Walk into a modern hospital with an unexplained pain in your chest, and one of the diagnostic tools a cardiologist might reach for is a rubidium PET scan. The procedure injects a tiny amount of radioactive rubidium into your bloodstream. Because rubidium behaves chemically like potassium, your heart muscle absorbs it the same way it absorbs potassium during normal function. A scanner then tracks where the rubidium goes in real time and produces a map of blood flow through your heart, accurate enough to spot blocked arteries, damaged tissue, and early signs of disease that older imaging methods would miss. The same technique is now being used to detect certain cancers and monitor cellular activity at a precision medicine has never had before. Now layer in defense. Modern guided missiles, smart bombs, and precision targeting systems rely on infrared detectors to find their targets in the dark, through smoke, through fog, through weather conditions that blind every other kind of sensor. The most sensitive infrared detectors built today use rubidium vapor cells as part of their core sensing element. Without that metal, precision-guided weapons revert to dumb munitions. Hit rates collapse, collateral damage rises. Every modern military doctrine built around surgical strikes quietly assumes uninterrupted access to rubidium-based optics. If a metal you had never heard of running the timing of your phone, the brain of your hospital scanner, and the eyes of every guided weapon system is already on the disturbing side of strategic. The next layer is the one that scares central bankers, and hitting subscribe right now is how you keep getting stories like this. Now stack on telecommunications. Every cell tower on Earth has to synchronize its signal with every other cell tower in its network down to the microsecond. Without that synchronization, your phone call drops the moment you walk between two coverage zones. Your text message arrives garbled. Your data connection collapses. Rubidium oscillators sit inside the timing modules of the major carrier networks worldwide, quietly keeping the entire wireless economy aligned. And finally, the layer that no economic policy paper wants to discuss in public. Global financial transactions, every stock trade, every currency exchange, every interbank settlement are time-stamped to within 1 microsecond by atomic clocks built around rubidium. High-frequency trading firms in New York, London, and Tokyo win or lose billions of dollars on margin, measured in those same microseconds. The financial system runs on rubidium time precision, the same way the body runs on heartbeats. Here is the part that makes substitution physically impossible rather than merely difficult. Replacing rubidium in these applications is not a chemistry problem. It is not an engineering problem. It is a physics problem. The specific resonant frequency of the rubidium atom, the specific way it absorbs and re-emits energy, the specific decay rate of its isotopes, those are properties of the universe itself. No engineer can design around them, which is exactly why what China is doing next with this supply is not just about owning a mine, it is about owning everything the mine eventually becomes. Why China is not selling you the metal. For most of modern history, a country that discovered a strategic resource did one of two things: sell the raw material at the highest price the global market would pay, the Saudi crude oil model, or restrict exports to keep reserves for the future, the American helium model. In both cases, the controlling country treated the resource as a commodity with a price tag attached. Beijing is doing something different. Something with almost no historical precedent at this scale. Picture a furniture company that owns the world's largest hardwood forest. The obvious move is to sell raw logs. The clever move is to mill the logs into lumber first. The genius move is to refuse to sell wood at any stage and instead sell only finished tables, chairs, and cabinets branded by the company that owns the forest. Every retailer on Earth that wants to stock furniture now buys from one supplier. That is the model China is applying to rubidium. The strategy is called vertical integration. It means controlling every step from the rock in the ground to the finished product on a shelf, mining the ore, refining it into pure rubidium, processing the metal into specialized chemical compounds, manufacturing those compounds into atomic clocks, ion thrusters, PET scan isotopes, infrared sensors, and timing oscillators, and then exporting those finished components, ready to install, to customers worldwide. At no point does the raw rubidium leave Chinese borders. What leaves is a Chinese product. Here is the move almost no Western mineral analyst has fully internalized yet. Chinese engineers recently developed a new concentration process that boosts recovery rates while cutting toxic byproducts. Parallel investment has gone into rubidium recycling systems designed to recapture the metal from industrial waste streams. Both pieces, better extraction and closed-loop recycling, extend the supply advantage across the entire product lifecycle. And here is the timeline that should make every Western trade ministry pay close attention. China has set an internal target of complete domestic supply chain control over rubidium by 2025. Not partial, not majority, complete. From mining to refining to processing to manufacturing to export. One country, one supply chain, one set of pricing rules, one set of customer priorities. Now think about what that means for any company anywhere on Earth that needs rubidium to manufacture its product. Your atomic clock factory in Switzerland, your aerospace contractor in California, your medical device maker in Germany, your telecommunications firm in South Korea. Every one of those companies negotiates with the same supplier, on the same terms, in the same currency. There is no second source to walk away to. There is no alternative country to bid against. The entire downstream global industry has been quietly funneled toward a single counterparty. Which means the leverage Beijing now holds is not something that has to be activated through a crisis. It is already operational, every day, in every contract signed. And the country that should have seen this coming is the one that lived through almost exactly the same situation 15 years ago and apparently forgot the lesson. The lesson Washington already lived through. Cast your mind back to 2010. A Chinese fishing trawler collided with two Japanese Coast Guard vessels near a disputed island chain. Within days, Beijing quietly slowed rare earth exports to Japan. No announcement, no press conference, just a sudden drag on shipments of 17 specialized elements that Japanese electronics, automakers, and defense contractors all depended on. The effect was almost instant. Japanese factories started rationing components within weeks. Prices for certain rare earth oxides spiked more than 10 times their pre-crisis level. Western governments quietly panicked because the same supply structure existed for them too. After that crisis, Washington made promises. So did Brussels and Tokyo. Strategic mineral diversification became a stated priority. Domestic mining projects were funded. Stockpile programs were expanded. The lesson had been learned, or so it looked. Now, move the clock forward. As of 2019, the United States imported 95.6% of its rubidium from China. Almost the entire supply, from one country, with no meaningful alternative. To picture that level of dependence, imagine if 95 out of every 100 barrels of oil entering America came from a single foreign supplier Washington was strategically competing with. No energy policy would tolerate that. Yet the equivalent arrangement for rubidium has been in place for years. Here is the uncomfortable detail you will not read in most trade reports. America had a chance to build a domestic rubidium processing industry after 2010. It did not. The rare earth lesson did not transfer. And the form the leverage will take is more uncomfortable than the size of the dependency itself. Leverage dressed as normal commerce. When most people think about one country using a critical mineral as a weapon, they imagine the dramatic version, an embargo, an export ban, a formal announcement that triggers panic across global markets. That is the version that makes the headlines. It is also the version that almost never happens, because it would invite retaliation and force a global supply chain reset that ultimately damages the controlling country itself. The real weapon is quieter. It is structural dependency dressed as normal commerce. Every contract for a rubidium-timed atomic clock signed under Chinese pricing terms. Every aerospace component manufactured to specifications dictated by Chinese refining standards. Every medical scanner designed around the availability of Chinese isotopes. Every cell tower upgrade routed through Chinese oscillator suppliers. None of it looks like leverage, all of it is. And here is the part that should change the way you read every future news cycle about mineral discoveries. The controlling nation never has to threaten anything. It just has to keep showing up to the negotiation table from a position of permanent strength. Prices get set. Partners get prioritized. Technology development gets steered. Because every company building rubidium-dependent products has to design for Chinese supply conditions whether they want to or not. That leverage is already operational. It is compounding daily. And it will still be running long after the headline this discovery generated has been forgotten. So tell me honestly in the comments, does a discovery like this make you more impressed by the strategy or more uneasy about the world it builds? Both answers are defensible. Drop yours below. And if quiet, slow burn power shifts are the kind of story you want more of, the like and subscribe buttons are how that keeps happening.